Okay. Are we live? Yeah. Okay, we're live. Rishu, I think we can start. Piyush's colleague should be here in a minute.
hmm So let's get started. We just wait for some folks to join in.
No, I think
Is
let's
anyone?
start since there's also a live audience on YouTube and there are folks who are waiting over there as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So this is great. So hey everyone, welcome once again to another session by Hasgeek. Right. I'm Rishu, your the moderator for today, and quickly setting the context on what today's session is all about. So I am, as of now, I'm a consultant by profession and I work with a lot of different organizations where I end up, looking at their tech stacks, their transformation aspirations, and where is it that they want to go from a technology roadmap point of view. And there's something that actually struck me, given that I work with a lot of FIs or financial institutions, which is if you look at the major decision making engine, which is essentially, the business process automation, the business rule engineering pieces of it. What turns out is that a lot of these organizations, given their age, given the runway they've had in the, given the run they've had in the industry, that the decision making uh, tooling is still very, very proprietary, very, very enterprise. You usually have well-established players who still come deploy. There's going to be someone who's, IT contractors who are going to come customize it, run it for you, and so on and so forth. And of late, what is happening is there's been this new generation of companies coming in fintech as well and FI as well, where there is a lot more new tooling coming around. There's a lot more emphasis on exploring what are if open source technologies can actually take over and can kind cause some sort of an incursion into this well established area where these enterprise players are playing, right? So a lot of these companies that exist today are also contemplating that how can they accelerate, how can they also attract talent, because let's face it, working on open source, enhancing open source is also a great pitch for getting exciting young talent on board, which has the hunger for it, right? So there's a lot of this play going on, and at the same point in time, given the size of businesses that ride, given the kind of customer base and support that they have, given in some cases, given the criticality of the businesses, these enterprises are also sometimes in a fix of whether they should go for it, whether they should not go for it, what is the right time, what is the right way to do it, right? And so in today's session, it is essentially about discussing some of these challenges, some of these observations, and also to share their experiences while being on this journey. We have Sujan from Razorpay who is joining us. We also have Saurabh and Manu, right, from Capillary. So we are going to hear a lot from them, and I'm going to be as much of a uh, curious cat as most of the folks on this live stream are. So first up, huge welcome to Sujan, Saurabh, and Banu. Thanks a lot, guys, for making time for this
Thank
and
you.
joining for sharing your experiences. Great. I'm just going to hand it quickly over to for a quick introduction to Sujan, Saurabh, and Banu in that order. If you guys could quickly introduce yourself for our audience.
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Sujan. I'm a lead software developer in Razorpay Technologies. They're like Razorpay. I'm part of the Razorpay Capital Engineering team. So Capital is like a lending arm of Razorpay, like where we offer credit to small and medium sized businesses, like maybe for their like very short term needs or like for recurring needs. Like we have like a corporate cards as the primary offering, and also we have like cash advances, credit line for like your short term needs. So yeah, it's about me. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great, Sujan. Saurabh, over to you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Saurabh Kumar. So I'm working as the Director of Engineering in Capital Technologies. And I have been managing 3-4 teams within Capri right now. One of the key projects where I was involved is around the OTA payments, as in over-the-air payments, and where we use the Commanda framework. Some of those we will discuss going forward in this call. So welcome, as in happy to have a good discussion and some suggestions from all of you.
Great, great. Thanks a lot, Saurabh. Right. And with that, we quickly move on to our final panelist for today, which is Bhanu. Hey, Bhanu.
Hi. I'm Bhanu. I'm a software architect in Capri Technologies. So I've been working on scaling applications, real-time applications. But one of the projects that I worked on for a few months is the payments orchestrator service. I mean the OTA that has Saurabh mentioned. So in that piece, actually, we evaluated multiple workflow orchestration tools. So in that process, we moved on to use Commanda. So I guess I will be discussing a lot on that, and hope to learn a lot from you all.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And so before we quickly start, here is our customary plug, which is who we are. We essentially RootConf. What RootConf is, it used to run as an annual conference. We started in 2011 as practitioners for what was then DevOps, then became DevSecOps, and then eventually evolved into site reliability engineering, right? And the idea behind starting this was to share, approaches that the folks in the industry were following to solve infrastructure development, deployment challenges across the board as a community, right? Now, what has happened is we've recognized how the industry is also changing, and accordingly, we have also changed, right? We have now diverged into a continuous community program where we focus not just on DevSecOps, we've also, you know, split into specialized branches such as cloud ops, such as data security, data ops, and a whole bunch more, right? And we also have, for those on the cybersecurity side of things who feel that, you're talking about dev and ops as the tech part of it. On the security part of it, since April last year, we have collaborated with Privacy Mode program. And since then, we've had a few sessions, which are probably India's first and premier conferences on data privacy in engineering and product. And those are some of the things you should definitely check out on the RootConf portal. So that's it for primarily for the plug. And with that, let's just quickly jump onto the discussion, right? So what I'll probably start with some questions, and to all our audiences, please keep the questions coming in on the chat. They are super helpful, and the panel can definitely share a lot of their insights onto this, right? So Saurabh, Bhanu, and Sujan, what I have usually seen is that the BPM BRE play has been, as stated, very enterprise driven, where you usually have the heavyweights who have occupied this for quite a while. They have certifications that a lot of people do. A lot of people are, essentially specialists into these individual tools. And then there are open source solutions, such as you would have Camunda, which is, I've had some experience running Camunda in a very different non-fintech kind of a domain. But then what I also want to understand, maybe starting from Sujan first and then moving on to you guys, is how did you guys stumble across
Rishu, I think you muted yourself accidentally.
we need to have we need to use this, and then how did you guys come across and said that, okay, let's go for an open source solution as compared to one of the established big boys?
Sorry, actually, we lost you for like last 1 minute. Can you please repeat the last
Yeah,
part?
I'll just repeat. Sorry, I'll just repeat that. So what I'm saying is that that what I'm very curious to understand is that when you guys were going across it, how did you guys come across the requirement? Where is it that you would feel the need for a BPM or a BRE solution, right? And then also when you guys were making the decision of which tooling to go with it, how come? What is it that what considerations led you to using something like Camunda as compared to the more established players who usually have an FI or a fintech footprint in the industry and are well established. Maybe starting from you, Sujan, and moving on to Saurabh and Bhanu will be very interesting to hear that story.
Sure. I'll give a bit of context on like the use case why we are like where we are using Camunda actually. So we are using Camunda platform mate actually. Even there, just the workflow engine part of it. So I mentioned like Capital, right? Like Capital is a lending arm of Razorpay where we are like offering like multiple lending related offerings like a card or like a loan kind of a thing, like a credit line. So for this we have an application journey. So if you are a business and you want to get onboarded on one of these offerings, like you'll have to like do certain steps. So that journey itself is actually like a multi-stage one. Like you'll start with like some basic details about your business, your like your PAN, GST, and your business vintage and business description related details, and probably you'll give your key stakeholder details. You'll do a bureau check. You'll give like more details on your business about like your previous business income and related stuff and all. And then like you'll finish the first stage of the journey, like application journey, and then it'll actually hand it over back to the back office. So in the back office, like we do have like business verifications. Like we'll do verify like whether whatever you have shared is actually valid, the documents uploaded is valid, like your credit verification is done correctly or not, those things. And then we hand it over to the underwriting team. So once everything is good, the first part, like if the first part of the thing is good, then there is credit verification, underwriting. So underwriting is actually like a very last step. So most part of that stage or like functional is actually happening offline in our actually Capital use case. So what we wanted to do to start with, at least to bridge this gap, so take like most of these underwriting functions to online. So the reason for that is that the underwriting process itself is actually like multi-stage, right? So as a product, they didn't have any insights on like what are the time taking steps, or they didn't even have like idea on visibility as such to that, like where is the currently where is the application. So that itself is not available. So it is not being tracked properly. Probably like it is tracked, but like it is tracked in multiple different platforms, not in a single platform as well. So that was one reason, like where we needed some visibility into like what's happening in the underwriting functions. And also, like if you get visibility, you will actually be able to figure out the pain points and then improve on that pain points, improve, like optimize those difficult areas and all. So that was one reason. And also, since this is actually a risky flow, right? Like underwriting is something like you where risk is involved. So there is some process we wanted to enforce. So because this was happening offline, entirely offline, mostly offline, we were not able to do that. So bringing in this process, like enforcing this process in the workflow was something was not possible if it were done offline. So bringing online was the other reason, like which we were actually exploring this. So then we could have actually done this with just the current existing setup, like where handling the state machine yourself using your like own application code and then everything. But then again, like it was actually not just a few handful of steps. It was actually like a very complex workflow where like based on certain parameters of the application, that the path an application can take like can completely change. So different levels of approvals could be possible based on the credit limit we are going to offer, or like based on the type of business, or like how long the business has been running in. So that's why like having a proper workflow engine made sense for us. So that's when we thought that we should add a workflow engine. And this is just a underwriting use case. So we also have like ops related use case, like where I was talking about like business verifications and all, right? So this is just before the offer stage, like where we actually say, come back to a business saying that like this is what credit line we are offering to you with this interest and multiple other parameters. But even after this, like if they agree to go with the offer, or like they negotiate and agree to go with the offer, there are like more steps afterwards also, like related to e-signing a loan agreement, providing more KYC details, which could be later required by the lender and all. So this was just part of the problem. So overall, including a workflow engine in the current application setup would be really beneficial in the long run also, to even automate other parts of the application journey as well. So that's why we plan to actually go with a workflow engine instead of just doing everything ourselves. So that was the first part. And then like we thought of like exploring different options like we had. So there was an internal implementation of like one of the like workflow engines also. So Cadence was actually deployed internally, and then on top of it, like we had written a DSL as well. But like I can go into detail on like why we didn't go with this and why we eventually chosen Camunda also. But otherwise also we explored like multiple other options also, like AWS step functions we explored, and we explored like Cadence directly also. And then there were a couple of solutions like internally which were available, and Netflix conductor also, like we explored like most of these cases at a high level. Like the reason like why when we went with Camunda was like majorly two reasons. One, for this, right, like I mentioned about having visibility into like what is happening was important. So with the other solutions, if I take an example of Cadence, it was like well suited for a automated mostly automated workflow, like or a workload. So if your use cases are like mostly automated, like there are scripts you'll have to run at a particular stage, or like you'll have to do an HTTP call to do certain things and all, probably like Cadence would have been better. And also it is mostly focused towards developers, in the sense like you define these workflows as code. So as a developer, it will be like really great for me, because like I'll have like more visibility, I'll have more control and all. But then again, if I have to give this visibility to the product team, it will be really difficult. Like you'll have to always be dependent on the developer. So the main value add we had with Camunda is that it's support for BPM and 2.0. Like it was like we could just throw away everything, and then we could just represent the entire workflow, like the application workflow, as a BPM diagram, and everything will work out of the box. So product will always have visibility into like what is currently running, what is currently deployed, and also they can, because they have visibility, they can suggest minor changes and probably even make some minor changes as well. So that was one major one main point like why we went with Camunda. And the other one is that most of the other solutions like we explored, they had some support for async workload, but like mostly they were actually kind of hacks, or like not directly supported. But especially this Camunda platform 8 had like really good support for async workload, like having event based gateways, or like event based tasks also, and having like workers to actually run any task like which could take time, and yeah, this was and also human related tasks. Like actually we are not using that, but like human based workloads also can easily be done with the Camunda platform. Like they have this task list solution as well, right? So which can be easily used to integrate with your internal like probably dashboard, and then handle the human based task assignment, and then processing as well. So that was the other reason like why we went with the Camunda.
So what I'm hearing between, and this is a very great point that you bring up, right, which is around AWS step functions, Google Workflow, and the like,
Yeah.
right? That that it is usually the lack of visibility that would happen some point in time, and you'd be like, oh wait, what do I do right now? Correct. That is one. The other part, what I'm also hearing is that you said that, oh, you guys actually ended up using a Camunda modeler, which, as far as I understand, is one of the latest products that Camunda has floated out, right, compared to the rest of the BPM. So did you guys end up integrating with some of these underlying systems using the APIs that Camunda provides, or was it primarily via the modeler? And the rationale for asking this question for our audience also is that in industry, there are two very main models that go out. One model that goes out is that you usually have, you go via the modeler, process modeler that Sujan was talking about. It's a drag and drop workflow, low code, no code kind of a workflow, and you let the process run with that. The other one is that you essentially take to your business logic and you invoke components of your rule engine and components of your decision engine separately using REST APIs, and you just simply remove the modeler, because it just then becomes something like developing a backend service and integrating it to the front end layer, right? So Sujan, could you, and at this point in time, I think it would be great for Solomon Bhanu to chime in as well as needed, that why take the modular approach where, and not the other one where you could just have directly integrated with the APIs.
Yeah. Actually, we are doing both. It's kind of like a hybrid approach, at least. To start with, like in the beginning, like we deploy a BPM and diagram modeled on the modeler. So still, like we don't have like an end-to-end solution as to like completing the loop where you actually make changes and that gets automatically deployed and then the new changes will take effect. But like we are still in like a partially automated approach where we use modeler to define the initial workflow, we deploy it, and then still again the other communications between, like if there are anything we are pushing to workflow or like we're listening to any changes from the workflow, they happen using the Go client we have, like we use Golang. So this is again like you mentioned, it's actually it's not RESTful, but like it is over gRPC protocol. So that still happens, and then any changes whichever are there are actually suggested to the BPM and diagram, and then we have like a release process like which will take in the new changes. And obviously I missed one point. Camunda platform, it has like really good support for versioning, so we don't have to worry about like previously running applications or instances on the previous version, and then we can easily deploy the new versions and then make sure that like everything works out of the box. So backward compatibility, handling backward compatibility is also not a problem with this platform. I hope this answers your question.
No, this is very, and I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Yep, great. No, this is definitely very, very helpful. This does throw a lot of light into the kind of decision that went into it. I think at this point in time, let's also hear from Saurabh and Bhanu on their experiences around this, because what would usually happen is that there would be a running business for underwriting and everything else that would be going on, and then a new tool comes in which potentially automates it. So, what was the kind of process and what was the kind of approach you guys took on onboarding it? Because you
Yeah.
guys would have had to create swim lanes, you guys would have had to also, go ahead and do a lot of automation around that. So how was that entire journey? What were your experiences while you were doing it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just quickly explain why. And first of all, thanks, Sujan, for explaining so nicely. So from my side, I'll first explain what was the reason why we went with something like a Kamunda. Okay, what was the primary reason, and what were the advantages it provided us over some of the tools like Netflix Conductor as well as AWS step functions, which we basically evaluated. We will go over them as well. Bhanu will take into detail why we went with Kamunda. But to start with, basically, the problem which was in our hand was we were developing a new product altogether called OTA, which is over the air payment. Okay, so it was more of a orchestration where basically we had a am I audible?
Yeah, you are now. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so what I was saying is that we were trying to develop a new product altogether called OTA, which was over the air payment. Okay, the use case which we were trying to solve was basically this was for I would say the Asian markets, where basically people used to come to the pump and automatically they will basically open their mobile app, they will do some pre-payment and automatically the pump will unlock, and customer will do the fueling in, and basically after that the customer can go away and automatically receipt will be sent back to the customer. So this was one of the flows. Okay, when we basically undertook this thing, we also knew that basically this is just one of the flow. This is just the pre-authorization flow. It can also be a post-authorization flow where basically someone is doing this, someone is doing the payment post fueling, right? The same kind of flow can also be used to in order to basically simulate a, let's say, a coffee maker, right? So we basically undertook all these different assumptions while designing this product, that ultimately this is kind of a workflow that basically people want to set up a certain different steps, and they want to call these different steps based on a certain order or a certain sequence. Okay, and each sequence has its own properties which should be very generic. right? As in each sequence can have a HTTP call, can have a queuing based call, or anything, which can be very generic. So our system should be extremely generic in nature. Okay. So having all these requirements gathered, we had a very clear understanding that we wanted to go with a workflow kind of setup, because workflow, all these things are ultimately a workflow. Okay. The second reason why we went with a workflow kind of setup is because, as I said, we as Capillary is a multi-tenant kind of organization. Okay, where every organization will have its own complexity. Every organization wants to do a certain step in a very different way. Some organization will add another step to whatever is existing right now for a client, right? And every organization will be running every organization can run in a different cluster altogether. Okay. And it can also be the case that as Sujan explained, the versioning support, as in someone wants to change something to the flow and they want to preview that flow first before actually applying it to the production environment, right? So Camunda had that basically these versioning support also very nicely built up. So you can basically do a preview of the new version before actually making it the primary version or the live version, right? So all these cases put together, basically we went with something, we were very clear that we want to go with a workflow kind of setup. Now, the options which we had in our hand, it was the cadence. We had the Netflix conductor. We also had the AWS step function, and we also evaluated we also evaluated Camunda. Okay. The one of the primary reason we went with Camunda is basically the space where we were dealing with was payments. Okay. If something is unsuccessful, there should be a rollback step immediately. Okay, if let's say I'm trying to authorize a pump or something, and if that is unsuccessful, I should immediately unauthorize or basically revert the amount which I am trying to deduct or I would have already deducted, right? Or basically if I have basically authorized a pump and I'm trying to move to the next step and the next step is unsuccessful, I should immediately unlock the pump so that some other user can use it, right? So this complete rollback thing was very nicely built in Camunda. We didn't find this rollback so nicely built in when it came to AWS step function or when it came to, let's say, a conductor or a cadence as well. So this rollback strategy for us was very important. Okay. Second important point why we went with something like as in went with Camunda was the versioning thing which I already covered. We wanted as I said that at different time, basically people want to do different things altogether with the existing setup. As in I have completed all these things. Now do a webhook call on this particular URL so that I'm getting notified of this particular event as well. Let's say if this kind of use case comes. Now I don't want that this particular use case should break any existing flow, right? So you can basically create this function programmatically, as in we have exposed an API, you can just call that API, it will create a workflow with a new version altogether for you. You know the version ID, you just do a call with that version ID, and you can check the complete workflow before affecting the currently live workflow. So that was the other advantage which we clearly saw with Camunda. And the third, which we felt was very important for us, which AWS step function was especially not providing, was something called immediate deployment. If I'm changing something in AWS step function, it goes to a Lambda deployment. It's a half an hour or 15-20 minutes deployment. That is something which was not there with Camunda. You can immediately create a workflow, and if you are okay with the preview, you can basically make that workflow live. So some of these things, I would say, played a part why we went with Camunda.
Understood. And when you say that that you could create, a newer version of a deployment and you could run it to see the changes, are you saying there's also a dry run capability that can be utilized and sort of, test out the flow?
Correct. So basically, Camunda, the way Camunda works is by default, there's a default version. So every request will go to a default version, but they also have a versioning support. If you want to test something on a certain version, you can do that as well. So what I meant there is that if I'm creating a new version, I know the version ID of that. So I can do a preview checkup or a testing on the new version. And if this new version is okay, then I will make this as the default version.
Got it. Got it. That's awesome. That is awesome. And how did you guys? And one of the other things I think we're talking about is how did you guys actually manage to have the entire movement per se?
So for us, it was a new project altogether.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was not a movement; it was a new project altogether, and where we basically from the onset itself, it was kind of clear that it needs a workflow kind of setup, and that's how we basically moved in this direction.
Got it. Got it. That explains it. That helps. So primarily a greenfield implementation and one that essentially goes around. This is amazing to hear. One would like to hear your take as well.
Bhanu, you're on mute.
First, when we initially started to evaluate all the workflow related flows, the main problem that we had was that our workflows need to be created. I mean, everything for us is actually programmatic. I mean, we didn't use the model notation at all. I mean, everything, all the workflows were created programmatically, and we don't even use the UI a lot. It is only used for the developers for their own use case, but the product team and our customers also don't really have any visibility into that, and that is not our use case also. But the programmatic way of creation and the real-time creation of the workflows, that was something that was the initial thing that helped us decide quickly on to invest where to actually whether to go with Camunda or with Netflix Connector or with AWS Step Functions. The major drawback from AWS Step Functions, from my point of view, was the amount of time it takes to have the workflow getting created or the workflow getting updated. So that is the initial problem for us, and also because we have our Capillary is a very multi-tenant service. The number of workflows could be so different, so many different kinds of workflows, and the ability to copy the workflows and copy a particular workflow from a test flow to a live flow. So all these things are much easier because everything was done programmatically. So we were able to achieve that easily through Camunda, whereas we were not able to achieve that so much through AWS Step Functions. And also our request is essentially the whole pipeline in itself is a completely REST-based pipeline. I mean, we would be doing HTTP calls, and the request and the response from the whole workflow, the end of the workflow, at least till that step, we would want it in that same response. I mean, we are looking for a synchronous request response model actually. But whereas with when we try to evaluate the same with Netflix Connector, it is, I mean, fashionably used more for the asynchronous workflows. It has support for synchronous, but that is not what it is used a lot for. There is not a lot of community that uses the synchronous workflows in the Netflix Connector. So that was one drawback that we felt for the Netflix Connector. And then we, as Saurav also explained, that we have compensation models that are built in very easily in Camunda. So now Capillary has like 100 plus of microservices built in. So the integration of this particular the payment service with all these microservices were very straightforward for us. We would be defining the basic structure for each step. That, let's say, if I want to push my data to points engine service, I mean, I want to push my data to loyalty service, where we would basically do some incentivization. We would have a step defined for that. If I want to push that message the data to a messaging service, we would have a step defined for that. The integration becomes so easy, and because we have initially developed each individual step separately, and and we have given the ability to combine these steps sequentially in the way they want for each tenant individually, I mean independently, and they would all be running in a single application. So in that sense, that became easy for us to have that multi-tenancy build part onboarded much easier. And also the other thing is that the scalability now, because we are using the Camunda jar actually directly plugged in our Maven application, I mean Java application. So we were able to scale it horizontally, and the state of that Camunda is completely on DB. I mean, there is no state on the application, so we can scale it horizontally. That is something that also helped us a lot. I mean, this scaling is present in AWS Step Functions as well as Conductor, but it ticked off our boxes. I mean, that is one thing that it would be like. I mean, we would be against it if the scaling was a concern, but from the load test and all that we have done, we were able to meet our SLAs. So even generally, when we look for a long-running workflows, there would be some short-lived part of it where we would want to meet our SLAs. So that we are still able to achieve with Commenda. So that is one box that we were able to tick off easily. And also there is support for long-running workflows, obviously, in Commenda. So that also helped us in deciding better. And also the ability to integrate with APM services like Neuralink or Datadog, all these, that is something that we follow as a tradition in all our microservices and Capillary. So that is, if that is there, then it would make our lives that much more easier. So that came off because it is an in-house application, and we are just using the Commenda jar. So it is easy for us to integrate with the Neuralink. Whereas in AWS step functions in some regions, in regions like Beijing and all, it is not possible. Whereas Capillary services are present in different AWS regions. So I mean different countries. So that part was not going off properly with AWS step functions. So that is also one of the reasons why we were against AWS step functions. So overall, with all these features coming in together, right, it helped us to choose easily that Commenda is the right thing for us, and we were able to meet our SLAs in terms of our response times also. Even though it is a workflow model, for each step we have particular SLAs to meet, and we were able to take that out. So in all that combined together, it was easy for us to decide that we would be going with Commenda.
That's a great. Any other open source candidates that you guys also looked at? Like I know you talked about Netflix Conductor, you also talked about Step Function, but taking stepping back into the domain of Commenda, because Commenda in itself is like an open source BPM BRE engine. Any other tools of similar nature you guys looked at as well? Because I think the comparison with Conductor and AWS Step Functions is amazing, and I think it also highlights why you would need a separate orchestrator as compared, to use the VPN. But any other tools that you also looked at other than
Commenda, these are the three: AWS Step Functions, Commenda, and Netflix Conductor. These three are the things that we evaluated more. We did read about other workflow tools like MuleSoft also, but that didn't help a lot because it is a paid version, most of it.
Yes. So just to answer that, we actually started with some other tools also like Cadence and all, and MuleSoft as well. But I think those were discarded at the very early state when it came to the workflow setup, the kind of, I would say, the HTTP workflow we were looking for. And finally, the three which was shortlisted where we wanted to go deep were these three: the AWS Step Function, Commenda, and the Netflix Conductor.
Got understood. And also, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and the reason why that decision was made is that there is no additional infrastructure need to maintain Commenda. It's just a SQL DB that we need. So it is that much easier to deploy and get it running.
Understood. Also wanted to quickly kind of get a quick understanding of this, that since you guys use the process modeler, right, very often, so there are going to be two ways in which it works, and I think Sujan said that we have a mixture of both approaches, which is the modeler as well as the gRPC integration. However, would also like to understand that how is the UI managed here? Is the UI something sort of what the BPM industry calls a headless UI, where you essentially take the field, you take the certain inputs, and you just pass them on to the decision engine in order for it to make a decision? Or is it that there is also, there's a coupled UI altogether that Commenda provides? Because a lot of BPM players end up providing that, right? They essentially provide you a UI layer which can be skinned for your organization.
Yeah, I think on the platform 8, we also have Operate, which can be used exactly for the use cases like you're actually saying here, that where you can actually make modifications. One is you can see what's happening in your workflow engine overall, like what are the current running processes, where are the processes currently at, and making modifications and trying out. It works mostly as like a back office for you, like you can debug stuff there, or like you can
Right.
if there are issues, you can resolve them and then take them forward and all. That is one, and also there is task list also, which can be used for like admin related workflows, like where you have some tasks which can be assigned to like a group of people, and then they have to work on them, and then they have to mark it as done, like normal proper task list or like a to-do list sorts of. So that is also available in the platform 8, which can be used. Like it has its own UI, but yeah, both of these are actually available only on the non-community version of it, like for which like if you are actually self-hosting them, you'll need to get a license for these things. We didn't have use case for either of these things. We had like our own admin dashboard which could be used to like visualize these things and then work on. So we didn't use them. We are actually self-hosting the Commanda platform, but like without these options or like products.
Okay. The other thing also wanted to understand is that, as you said, right, that what do you call? We also would also like to understand some of the uh, um, aspects of, when you start putting workflows together in a drag and drop module. What is a huge here is to say that introducing new swim lanes and doing business rule engine or decision rule engine management, right? It makes it a lot more trivial, and it kind of elevates us a little further up from just being dependent on the technology team. So did you guys also experiment by having somebody who would be a non-technical person, a business-facing person, right? And just kind of say that, oh, let's have an analyst or let's have a product person be exposed to some of these swim lanes or or decision making rules engine. And did you guys try that, or is it still at a place where everything is just a um, you know a technology backlog request?
Yeah, right now it is at that stage only. We are pushing for the product teams to understand the BPMN concepts and get like give the requirements in that format only. But
Mhm.
still a long way to go. Like first is like we try out like as a like tech team being like properly comfortable with this, and then we'll build solutions around for the product team itself to actually handle this, like product or even other functions also. Like they should be able to manage their own workflows. That's the idea like we have, but like still far ahead,
Understood.
because BPMN is actually like a standard notation, right? So it is easier for everyone to actually try out. Like they need not actually do it only on our platform, like where this is managed. They can just go to Draw.io or like any open source platform for drawing, and then they can get started with it. So that is the idea.
I think that sounds excellent. And at this point, I'll just quickly take a break. I'm just going to probably look if there are any questions uh, in the chat or anything for us. Looks like we are doing this on a Wednesday afternoon where midweek blues are hitting really big, and probably uh, the first and foremost thing in minds of people is to essentially just finish Wednesday, head out, and probably grab a beverage of choice. So I think what we'll do is we will probably move a little bit ahead. If a question comes, I'll let you gentlemen address it as well. So I'm just going to now start moving towards a little bit towards the future of it. So because this is really amazing to see that, okay, a greenfield implementation in a new age fintech built on open source. It's like, it's like one of those stories that kind of comes into the play. And I think the next question would also be probably a little bit directed more towards Saurabh and Bhanu, which is saying that is this model something that you guys see? And I know, so then you would essentially, I think the success of this model would encourage Razorpay to adopt more of it. But I'm just trying to cast the net wider. So Saurabh and Bhanu, do you guys, based on this experience, do you guys kind of feel that cases like these or projects like these pave the way for incursion, or do you think there is still some distance to go before open source solutions like Amanda can kind of go head to head with the more specialized solutions ideally?
Yeah, I can go. So, in my opinion, Kamunda is almost there. As in, especially in our use cases, as I previously also said, like most of the things which Kamunda was doing for us, it was not getting done by some of these enterprise companies, right? And the future for me also looks great, not just in these kind of use cases, but also in a lot of other use cases where basically we do a lot of state managements, right? We have n number of tools where which we use. We sometimes define our own code. We basically handle things ourselves, that this is how we'll do the state management and all. And we don't normally go with a workflow kind of solution, whether it's a e-commerce kind of a journey where most of the time it's a workflow, right? So some of the places where I feel these Camunda kind of solutions will be very helpful going forward as well. And compared to, as I said, compared to enterprise solutions, I think it's already there. As in some of the capabilities like drag and drop, for us also it is too far ahead. As in we have also not explored some of these till now. And for us also, it is still very much tech driven. We still have to go some way basically where it is much more friendly for non-tech people also to use and configure these workflow. Those things are definitely easily supported in the enterprise solutions and all. Those parts still I would say might be slightly complex, but when it comes to the internal, the way it works and all of those have been extremely smooth for us.
That sounds awesome. And is there also an element of machine learning and AI that you guys are plugging into Camunda as a BPM solution? Because I think for a lot of underwriting stuff, right, AI has kind of come forth. I'll let probably Sujan answer that question. That are we using it? Is it in plans? If it is in plans, is it something that is fairly easy to plug into it? Because what happens is, other than the established players and open source, there's a third category that is emerging, which is essentially specialized systems. So now you essentially have end-to-end lending systems, you have end-to-end insurance systems, which go all the way from, even let's say suppose product configuration to rollout to underwriting to claims to settlement, like everything all together. So where decision making engines are just a smaller part of it. And with this third kind of a challenger, like the second type of challenger and a third player coming into the ecosystem, right? How easy or difficult it is to plug something like an AI or an analytics engine into a piece like Camunda, because these new challenges, they come with an AI engine already integrated.
Not directly AI or ML, but to some extent, like we already do this. So we have a risk product like which actually evaluates based on multiple data points like available inside Razorpay and the ones which are given by the customer to make some of these decisions already. Like they are not decisions per se for the time being; they are kind of suggestions. So these suggestions are actually used while making the underwriting decisions. So that is there. But yeah, AI and ML, obviously they can be easily plugged into the Camunda platform setup itself, like the workflow engine itself. But yeah, we aren't there yet. Like we are still one step before that.
Understood. But that is definitely in the works.
Yeah.
Great. And Saurav and Bhanu, just trying to get a sense of how easy or difficult it is to actually take an AI engine and just plug it into Camunda. Is it something that is fairly easy? Is it something that would need, creation of maybe an adapter or a plugin? Or how would that go?
So for us, I would say it has been still very much in a plug and play model only. We have not explored the AI part of it, and there has not been a use case as of now, I would say, where we wanted to explore the AI part of it. So that's something we have not explored from our side. Yeah.
Understood. No, this is definitely helpful. Definitely. All right. At this moment, I think we are just going to. I don't think we have any questions right now, so I'm just going to give back some time to everybody who's on the live stream. Right. We usually reserve 10 minutes for the question. Right. I think there is one question that is a very generic one from live stream, and it's had a very wider implication where it comes around and it says that why is it that we don't consider open source as secure in enterprise by and large, right? And it's about not just Camunda, not just about Linux. The the question is why not by and large VC, and why is it that even if we take closed source as SaaS? So I'm going to have you guys take a quick stab at it, but I'm just trying to answer this question from my own experience, which is it is not always a function of security when it comes to adopting open source, right? By and large, when a lot of companies that have technology or IT as a certain division of the larger business, they are looking to adopt new technology. There is also a function of support and timely output, right? So a lot of new gen companies essentially go tech first, right? That the product is not just powered by tech, but the product at times is tech, right? Much of the larger established companies, when they are moving, they are essentially have to understand it's a ship that takes a lot to be turned. Security is definitely a thing which they don't say it is not secure, but based on my experience working with fintechs, there is a higher barrier of entry into the ecosystem because a lot of data, a lot of sensitive information is usually at play. That is one. The second part is that once you have built a system, it's also about finding the right skill set for it. And as we said in the beginning of this conversation, when a lot of these established players, what they do is they actually start rolling out skill set programs. Right? You'll see a lot of people, for example, who are IBM BPM engineers. You'll see a lot of people who are Pega engineers, right? And these guys specialize in operating that complex system per se, which means that once these companies are adopted, they know that there is enough skill set in the market, right? And those are just my 2 cents on how this is looked at. There's not anything against the viability of open source or and like I said, security essentially just means you just raise the bar, you ensure it is continuously scanned, and whatever comes in with a very, very high bar on security. But with that, I'm going to also move to the experiential part of, you know, of Sujan and Saurabh and talk about your experiences around the same.
I think, in my opinion, because like open source, because the nature of it, like you have access to the source code, it is better in terms of like security, because like more people will be looking at the code, and then more people will be using and then raising these issues. But then again, the part like you mentioned about like maintenance of it, like how fast like someone will react to like when there is a security issue identified or not, like may not be great in all the open source software. So that needs to be considered. So again, like it's actually a trade-off, like one where like you don't even have any visibility like closed source, or like you go with open source, take some of the risks, like there again, like while making the choice, like it has to be considered, I guess.
Saurabh, Bhanu, you want to chime in on this one?
I think my viewpoint is also exactly same what Sujan told. It's a trade-off essentially, as in whether basically we want to, as in when you are working something on a Linux and when you are working with some open source languages and all, you can go inside a particular function, you can understand the how internally this particular thing has been implemented, rather than basically that particular thing is completely abstracted out of you. So that advantage you are getting, but that also has a disadvantage that someone can get hold of it and can inject something. That we have seen multiple cases around the latest one, the Log4j thing, which happened for everyone in the market, right? So those nuances are there, and those trade-offs we have to take. But what I personally feel the advantages of these open source systems, when you go inside the code, actually read about it, understand the nuances of it, it's much bigger compared to the shortcomings which we normally see.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there is always learning any open source project, a new skill needs to be adapted, and sometimes during the period when the individual team or the dev team are actually learning those skills. So during that phase, there are problems that they will encounter, and if there is the time that they can invest, then definitely open source. Or else, it is always helps that there is support that we can get for that.
That's great. Yep. All right then. I don't think we have any further questions. And as stated, let's give time back to our audience as well as to the panel. So again, once again, thank you so much, Sujan, Saurav, and Bhanu. This has been very, very enlightening, and I for sure learned a lot more than I knew, is what I would say, in the past 1 hour or so. And also, huge thanks to our audience who are plugged into the live stream, and also to folks who will be viewing this later for consumption. So, with that, I think we are pretty much at the end of our live stream, right? And what we are going to essentially now do is the recording for this is going to be published somewhere between 11th and 14th, along with a text summary. With that, again, a reminder, we at Rootcon, we have a really great Telegram group, and we would encourage you to go maybe look for it, and also join that for more offline discussions, which are very core tech. It's a great place to have for techies, tech entrepreneurs, new gen tech practitioners, additional experience. So with that, I think we would like to thank all our panelists once again, and thank you so much for joining and sharing your experiences. I'm sure this is going to get a lot of other folks thinking on how they can actually adopt, newer gen tech and run with it. Yeah, I think with that, at the end of the session. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot once again, Sujan, Bhanu, Saurabh.
Thank you.
And yeah,
Thank you.
catch you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.